welcome everybody to this celebration of International Women's Day, but with an emphasis on the women in Iran, and that is what we are going to be focusing on today from various perspectives. Obviously, I come at this from a legal perspective, and my work in relation to Iran has been predominantly around the human rights situation, but particularly looking at the 1988 massacre and calling for an independent UN set-up inquiry into that massacre. There's been numerous shifts and movements over the years that I've been working on that issue with many others, and I remain optimistic that in time we will see a tribunal looking into that inquiry. It is only a matter of time, and we are seeing accountability against and movements against impunity happening around the world.
You know, though we are early in celebrating International Women's Day, which is not until, March 8th, I think there's no better candidate for us to recognise and celebrate than the brave women of Iran. And in recent months, I'm sure you've all been aware of this, we've witnessed their bravery as they led the wave of national protest against that religious dictatorship that has forced millions of Iranian hostages for more than decades. It is, and you know, women have played a most significant role in Iran's freedom movement for over a century. And today they have a very inspiring leader, who it was my privilege to meet some time ago, in my good friend Mariam Rajavi, who continues to spearhead the struggle against the religious and pernicious dictatorship in that country. Here the United Government, now with this huge majority, must recognise and back the democratic aspirations of the Iranian people. Their organised resistance movement, the NCIR, and the support that Madam Rajavi's 10-point democratic platform is a viable alternative to the current religious dictatorship. Simply put, our message should be that we recognise that the problems in Iran have an Iranian solution, and we proudly support it.
And the Iranian nation largely reaffirmed its support for the protest movement by boycotting the regime's illegitimate parliamentary election only last Friday. The boycott was both a resounding rejection of the Tehran regime and also a sign that the movement for democratic change in Iran is very much alive and also deserves international recognition. The boycott came after a call by Mrs. Rajavi and was the product of the actions of the PMOI's resistance units all across Iran. And once again, the Iranian nation showed their desire for change, and this is a reality that should be recognized by both the British government and by the international community. The UN Human Rights Council 43rd session began this week in Geneva and will continue for much of the next month. The British government should be seizing this opportunity, I believe, to work with its allies to call upon the UN Secretary General to immediately dispatch a fact-finding mission to Iran, to investigate the killing of protesters, and to visit Iranian prisons to meet those arrested at the recent protests, and should also press the regime for the immediate release of those arrested in the recent protests and detained as political prisoners.
Montazeri also described the massacre as the worst crime in the history of the Islamic Republic. Think about what happened in 1988 when 30,000 political prisoners in Iran began with a fatwa from the highest authority, from Khomeini. And those who didn't renounce the main Iranian opposition, PMOI, after being asked that question by a three-man death commission, were executed on charges of waging war against God, according to Khomeini's decree. Girls as young as 15 or 16 years of age, as well as pregnant women, were executed in prisons across the country, the United Kingdom and its international allies should be seeking a referral at a very minimum to the International Criminal Court for the perpetrators of the 1988 massacre of those 30,000 political prisoners in Iran's prisons, which is so serious that it is considered a crime against humanity.
Now, as I've done in this event in previous years, I pay tribute to all the women who've been taking part in those political protests across Iran. They are incredibly brave, and it's clear that women in Iran are at the forefront of demands for democratic change and reform and human rights.